of View, a WOWT public affairs program which expands on the issues and events affecting our human condition.
I think we do underestimate the kids, what they want and what they need. I think that a lot of adults feel that the kids just want to, not in just what they're doing in their acting class, but in the theater they see. They think they just want to see bunnies and, you know, people in bunny costumes, and that's not true. Their minds are ready and willing to accept so much more, both in class and in what they see.
Children's theater, I think, is really family-oriented theater.
Kids today spend, literally by the time, I read one study that said by the time they graduate from high school, they've seen 20 to 40,000 hours of film and television, and yet they receive no education in how to watch film. So they become very passive viewers rather than active readers of the film.
Well, I think one of my major thrills about working at this theater is the influence that it will have on future generations. That's real important to me because we have an avenue here to really get into the brains of children.
There's a general excitement. It's almost like, for me, it's like being at a carnival or something. I mean, and watching them react to the play.
26 women and men from other organizations in town gathered at my house in the fall of 1949, I guess it was. These 26 people seemed to be quite excited by the idea. And about 20 minutes later, somebody raised his hand and said, I move that we start to organize such a group here in Omaha. And it was organized that evening. And I was made president, naturally, since I'd got them into it. What has happened in this theater is, after we got Nancy Duncan as a director, she began to view it in a much more modern way than anybody had before. And she said right away, when we chose her, she said, if you choose me, there are a lot of things I'm going to do, and I want you all to like them and believe in me. Well, nobody knew at that time what a tremendously active and imaginative intelligence our present director, Nancy Duncan, has, because she put the theater into the 20th century, you might say, which hardly anybody had done in the whole country.
How does the theater work? How does the theater work? Well, it changes every day, or it certainly changes as every new person comes into the theater, because we pretty much, well, actually, this kind of philosophy, I think, was started when I was hired, as far as I'm concerned, because the way that we work now is I think, very consistent to the way that the theater worked when they hired me, which was that they had a job to be done, but they really weren't sure what the job was because they had a building that they'd never had before. And when they hired me, they had been working in a certain way, but they had no idea how having a building was going to change it. So when they hired me, they just hired me. They hired me to do the job, but they didn't know what the job was. So that's what we've been trying to do now. That's what it pretty much has evolved that we're doing consistently, is to hire people rather than to try to fill a specific delineated job.
The first year I was here was rather bumpy, rather difficult. I didn't know exactly where I was or what I was doing or what my role was here, what my relationship was to the theater. And I had it was a difficult time for me in many ways, and I had a lot of growing up to do. And then I made some discoveries about what I could accomplish here at the theater, what I could do for the theater, and what the theater could do for me. And after that, it took about a good full year for that to sink in. And when I'd made those discoveries, then all of a sudden the Emmy Gifford became a very exciting and challenging, good place to work.
And oh yes, I baked my grandmother's recipe of cottage cheese pie, and I've divided it into 14 pieces, so I don't know how many people are here, and everybody, if you want a piece of cottage cheese pie, is basically an apple pie with cottage cheese in it, and it's very, very good. So you all get a wedge if you want, and I'm so proud of myself because it tastes. Could you what?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'll let you have it.
And I need to talk to Dan, but he's not here, so that's like all I have.
Okay. When Bill came, he essentially knew he was going to be helping with the direction, he was going to do performing, and he was going to be in charge of the theater school, which were all three things that I had been doing. I hadn't been performing because there wasn't time, because since I was doing the directing, and I really wanted to. So, but what he was to do was really up to him within that general outline, which was pretty much anything. So as he started directing, and he is a director, he began to grow as a director and to see other things that he wanted. It was Bill who, for instance, started the major push to become a professional theater company, because we had pretty much been an amateur theater company, used volunteers for everything. We had to be, we couldn't afford not to be, but at some point we had to make a choice where we are going to do this. And we will suffer because we'll have to make sacrifices in order to pay these people. We'll have to do not be able to do other things. But it was that decision, I think, which started the quality improvement, because then you paid better people, then those people also taught in your theater school. And so the theater school improved.
One of my goals always was, as an actor, director, was to work in a company that studied together, and I think that's very exciting. And I always wanted to be a part of a theater that had an educational wing. In acting class, I teach everybody. I try to teach them what I know. But the interesting thing is when you have a class that is very diverse, either age-wise or minority-wise, whatever-wise, you as an instructor and you as a class learn more. I mean, you gather something from the students. I mean, they contribute to the class on many different levels. If I had to teach a class that was all clones of Bill Kirk, it would be a pretty boring class. I mean, I think that's part of the dynamic of learning and teaching. I mean, this might sound real trite, but I certainly learn out of my teaching. I learn from the students. I learn lots of things. Not only about acting, but about being people and about being an artist. And that's exciting and that's important, I think.
I teach 4th through 6th grade beginning acting, and it's my first time teaching. I have had other jobs in creative dramatics and storytelling, things like this, that have used my talents with theater and children as well, but not to this extent. And the kids in my class are great. I love the class. I love teaching them. They've also helped me learn that a lot of the same techniques, exercises, things that we do in our own acting classes at college or in Bill's company class can be used with these kids. That's what they want, and that's what they need. And acting is acting, if you're 4 or if you're 40. So.
One of my first classes, I taught adult acting, and I'm teaching currently junior high and high school, and I've had the itty-bitties, the classes we call our babies. So my approach to each one of them is a little different, but my basic philosophy is trying to get across the idea of what we are trying to learn in our acting class for our staff. And
I think we have something very, very special. We do have a professional children's theater where our young people can learn the discipline of the art form. It's not something that you're born with and you just da-da-da-da become a star. It's work. It's something that you work at. Your body is your instrument. So it's just as if you are a fiddle or a piano or whatever. You have to keep yourself in tune and work at it. And I think it's very important for children to, one, understand that, and two, to become focused, disciplined individuals.
And I've always enjoyed high school people, and so after a year or two then of teaching, and I taught classes here before I was actually on staff. So after a while then it occurred to me that I found that junior high and high school and senior high were challenging for me because they certainly, that age level certainly presents its own difficulties, which I think is fun to work with.
And in fact, I bring my kids into this theater. My youngest daughter's taking acting lessons right now. My oldest daughter comes in and helps me with the filing, so it's like meshing your private life and your work life, which is just great because it's very difficult for a working mother to be able to mesh those two areas of her life. And it's been more or less just a process of teaching everybody here, because a lot of them don't have any kind of bookkeeping background. A lot of people don't have, didn't even take basic bookkeeping in high school. So we go back to the simple bookkeeping procedures. And when you teach people that and tell them the whys for it, there's no problems at all. Our funding is based on two pieces, earned income and unearned income. Unearned income is usually all the donated incomes, the grants that we receive, the patron drives, those kind of things. The earned income, which is basically a staff responsibility, is the membership drive, the ticket sales, anything that the staff is actively involved in earning. And right now, we're at about a 65-35 percentage, 65% earned, 35% unearned. That changes all the time. By the end of the fiscal period, it'll probably be about at that point. When I first came here, we had only 42% of unearned, of earned income, excuse me. So we're increasing our earned income areas. And
the Board of Trustees of the Emmy Gifford Children's Theater is composed of anywhere from 25 to 33 people who are from all over the community. Their function is to raise funds for the theater and to set policy for the theater. They are not a management board, although they do supervise and at least know what's going on, basically, with the staff. So we are here to get money for the theater, to get attention for the theater, to support the theater in every way that we can.
And for years and years, we had a board that I would characterize as more of a guild than a board. People met to help. In fact, the board members made the sets many, many years ago for the theater. They made the costumes. And the group of people that you need to carry out those kinds of functions, as opposed to functions of looking at budgets and fundraising, I think are a totally different set of skills in most instances. So over the past couple of years, there's been a conscious effort to make a change away from having the board function as a guild and get it more into the board framework. I think there's a valid need to have both a guild and a board for a group like the Emmy Gifford Children's Theater. But I don't think you can have the same group serve both functions.
It's break for lunch, and then we're going to come back, and Steve Johnson, who's our accountant, is going to do a little workshop about
Well, I think we do a number of original scripts, largely because there aren't any good scripts to do out there. I think people sometimes forget that children's theater does not have a long history. The Emmy Gifford is 35 years old, and that's very old for a children's theater. And children's theater in this country, previous to the 20th century, was virtually non-existent. So we're not talking about an art form that has a 2,000, 3,000 year history. So if you read scripts that were written, even if you look at stuff that was written in the late 70s, it has quickly become dated. And then if you look at scripts that were written in the 40s or 50s, they're very funny. So because the art form is evolving so much, and I think because children are changing so quickly and their needs are changing, and we're discovering, as adults, we're discovering those needs are changing. I think that's why we need to work on new scripts. Otherwise, the kids are not interested.
The theater world for children is an abysmal exploitive, condescending world. But it corresponds to the condescension and the arrogance and the lack of caring in the adult world. I mean, the two things go together. So if adults were not like that, children's theater wouldn't be like that. As long as that controlling attitude exists, and it's never going to go away, but as much as people are neglectful of the individual child, hooked to that neglect is control and tyranny. So what we feel is that, you know, coming very strongly on this theater from those people who are in that mindset. No matter what we do, they don't pay any attention to what we do that's good. They only pay attention to those little variances that we might make away from what they think is right. If they came to see our plays and participated actively in what we're doing here and really listened, they might be a lot more upset than what they are. But they go to sleep in the plays because they're condescending. It's good that they go to sleep, if they come here, that they go to sleep, that those fathers go to sleep. It's kind of neat that they do, because if they didn't go to sleep, they might get upset. But they come with their children, they go to sleep, and the child gets something that's really neat. So there's some hope in that, too. But those ones who stay awake and who get upset and who don't come to see what we do, there's no hope for them. You know, the only thing I can say is that, you know, maybe there's hope for their children, because those parents also don't pay much attention really to what's going on with those kids.
I think the problem comes when people hear that name, Emmy Gifford, children's theater. There tends to be a real prejudice against that word, children's theater. People tend to think of it as not real theater, but children's theater, not serious theater, not something you can take seriously, but children's theater. And that tends to be difficult when you're selling. You can sell it to families with children because they think right away, oh, I can bring my child to this, that's no problem. Sometimes it is hard to do more serious plays like Helen and Annie, or even when we did Little House on the Prairie, that was a little bit hard to draw people in at first, because people just don't expect it. Once we get them in the building, I think they're pleasantly surprised, and I know that after a lot of the question and answers, adults will say, I'm so glad you're doing this because it appeals to our children who we want to bring into theater and introduce them to theater, but it also is entertaining for us, you know. So I'm really happy to hear those comments, because that's what we want to do, is be a family theater. We want to be a place where families can come and feel comfortable.
Oh, one other thing I did want to finish. I think the signer is so eloquent in this production, and I'm glad she was integrated into the production. She was given a spot on the set, and she was given her own light, and I never felt that she overshadowed, but she was certainly eloquent. There was something else. I didn't know that Julie Valentine was black, and if I had read a review or maybe some publicity, I would have known that. So I was surprised when she walked on stage, and it's a black Annie. And, you know, then you start to think about it. And I thought the casting brought a new dimension to the script that wasn't already there.
Well, historically, in Nancy's research, she found that Kate Keller really wished that she hadn't married Captain after a while, and that there wasn't a lot of love between them, and he was difficult to get along with, and he was good at the crab, and no one liked him much. So that was sort of some of the research that we tried to bring out through the acting.
He's always like that. This is Boris, and we live together. And Boris grew up, well, I've been an actor all my life. So he's grown up around theaters and around television, around movies. He's been in some films and on TV. And some other live plays. He played another part here at the Gifford a couple of years ago in The Diary of Anne Frank. He played Mushy the cat. And he's just used to it. He's used to people and lights and the routine. He's a professional actor.
He is a professional cat actor. And this one right here, this props master person, ate an entire chicken and took the bones and glued them into the plate and then sprayed shellac on them. And that goes for the potatoes, which used to be white, but are now kind of a disgusting brown.
We'll gain a reputation in a matter of time, in a matter of years, I suppose, that people will come to the theater to see what the Emmy Gifford does just because we have that reputation, that our work is so good and it is quality, and you bring your children, bring adults, anyone, that it is good theater. It's not good children's theater, it is good theater. And when that happens, I would like to see us be able to branch out, do shows that people haven't heard of, not just Pinocchio and Peter Pan, but perhaps I was the other day pushing Bill, well, let's do some Pincher one acts, let's do some Beckett. The kids will love it, the kids will love it. And he said, well, yeah, the kids will love it, but the parents won't bring them. You know, we don't have that marketability yet. We aren't at the point where people will say, well, we'll just take them because it's the Emmy Gifford and we know it's good. They'll say, well, if it's Snow White, we'll take them.
My dream for the future of the Emmy Gifford Children's Theater would involve the solution of a problem that I see all the time, not only in Omaha, Nebraska, but on a national level. It's perceived to be a problem. Children's theaters all over the world are thought to be bush league. You know, this is the minor leagues, and then you get to Broadway, or you get to the Guthrie, or you get to some wonderful regional theater, and then that's it. That's where it's at, so to speak. And I don't agree with that. Emmy Gifford believes that good theater is for everybody. And no matter what the age, no matter what the disposition or politics or religion or whatever, if it's good theater, all the grandparents who come, all the parents who come are going to be just as interested in what's going on the stage as the children are. And I think that that's our goal here, is to make the theater good. And if the story happens to be The Wind in the Willows, there's a lot to be found in The Wind in the Willows for people of all ages. And
even Helen and Annie, which I am in now, and I love working on, I love the script, I've loved the experience, I've loved everything about it. It's not doing well commercially because it's not Peter Pan, and I just think it's a shame. It's a beautiful show. It's just a strong cast, strong acting, strong directing, wonderful script, and yet we don't have the audiences, not half the audiences that we pulled in for Peter Pan.
Well, colorblind casting, most simply, is just casting performers in parts regardless of whatever their ethnic origin is. My favorite story as far as colorblind casting went with Cinderella. We had Julie Valentine, who's on staff, who is a black actress. She was cast as Cinderella, and we had a white man cast as the prince. And after the show, I heard the story. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, was going home with her parents after the show, and she was saying, gosh, I really liked that play. It was so good, except Cinderella was the wrong color. And her parents were like, well, what do you mean she was the wrong color? I mean, you know, they were trying to be very, very, you know, forward and idealistic and, you know, free-thinking, but they thought, oh, my gosh, you know, she's got this thing about she's black, you know. And they said, what do you mean? She said, well, in my book, Cinderella's got a pink dress on at the ball, and in this play, she had a blue dress on. So, to me, I mean, I think the hope lies with our children because they don't see that. I think they see it, but it's not so ingrained in them as it is in adults.
I mean, I think when you look at our audience, when you consider that 30% of our school audiences are minorities, that I think we need to serve that population in Omaha, and I think the best way to do that is to have minority performers in our main stage productions. And I think that's important for Omaha and for the theater. There is some debate about how far you can carry colorblind casting. For example, if you are doing an historical piece, say, on Martin Luther King, can you cast that role colorblind? Well, probably not, because you're dealing with a very strong element in a show that is dealing with race. I think when you are dealing with the Frog Prince, and you have a prince that changes into a green frog, I don't think it concerns me at all what color the prince's father, aunt, uncle, friend is or are, you know. I think, for me, that's a non-issue. And I think that's important. And I get very frustrated when people see that as a blockage in them in terms of viewing a play. And I think my point is that certainly if you're not doing a historical play, that colorblind casting is a non-issue. Now, if you are doing a historical drama where race is an element involved in that piece, then I think you have to look closely at that. And I think that's unfortunate. I mean, I think that's a reflection of our culture. I think that's unfortunate in some respects. In another respect, I think it is important to use theater as a forum to unearth the variety of cultures within our country. I guess my frustration is when a director says, "Oh, I can't cast that person in that role because they're a minority performer." I mean, I think that question has to be addressed in our society.
My eyes are bad. Are bad. My